Pleasant good morning to our staff, colleagues, and most importantly, to our esteemed guests. Welcome to today's webinar titled Registering and Filing Annual Returns as a Nonprofit Organization. My name is Ariel Muschamp, and it's a pleasure to be your moderator for this session. We are grateful for your attendance. Before we dive in, let's go over a few housekeeping. One, this session is recorded and will be shared on our social media platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, and our website. A copy will be shared with you individually after we conclude. Two, there will also be a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to submit your questions anytime using the questions tab in the bottom right corner of your screen. Three, if you experience any technical issues, first things first, let's try to refresh our browser. However, our support team is also on standby if they are needed to assist. Now, it's an honor to introduce our speakers, Ms. Rochelle McFadden and Mr. Cadel Wagner. Ms. Rochelle McFadden has been the Assistant Director of the Compliance Unit at the FSC since November 2019. In this role, she is responsible for supporting the Compliance Department by overseeing regulation and supervision of the non-bank financial services sector. In 2023, she completed joint assessor training conducted by the Financial Action Task Force and the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. She's also a certified anti-money laundering and financial crimes prevention professional. Mr. Cadel Wagner has been serving as a compliance examiner at the FSC since May 2023. In his role, Mr. Wagner is responsible for conducting both on-site and off-site examinations for FS practitioners and non-profit organizations. His duties include the ongoing monitoring of assigned portfolios to ensure compliance with the relevant laws, regulations, and best practices issued by the Commission and other regulatory bodies. In addition to his core responsibilities, Mr. Wagner plays a key role in assessing companies' economic substance filings and ensuring their compliance with other legal obligations. He is also an active member of the Other Financial Institution Vulnerability Working Group, where he contributes to identifying and mitigating risk within the sector. With us today, we also have Ms. Jenilyn Armstrong, who serves as a processing officer of the Belize Companies and Corporate Affairs Registry, and she will be providing support for today during the Q&A session. During this session, our team will share who an NPO is, why you should register as an NPO, what are the requirements to register, what the re-registration process is in OBRS, the difference between incorporated and unincorporated NPOs. They will be sharing on fees, and we will have a demonstration on how to fill out these forms. In addition to that, the prevention of suspension and or cancellation. So, without further ado, let's get the ball rolling here, shall we? Please allow me to introduce Miss Rochelle McFadden to the stage. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Before we get into really speaking about the registration and filing, we'd just like to bring the matter of speak to you about the legal framework for NPOs in Belize. So we have the Nonprofit Organizations Act and its subsequent amendment. This NPO Act came into force on May 13th, 2023, and provides a risk-based supervision for NPOs in Belize, and this also is a part of Belize's efforts to combat terrorist financing abuse. There is the Nonprofit Organizations Record-Keeping Threshold Order of 2025. For this threshold, as it says, it speaks to having a particular threshold in place as it relates to record keeping. So where NPO receives a donation for $15,000 more from a single donor within any financial year, that NPO must take all reasonable steps to ensure that and keep records of the identity of that donor. There's the nonprofit organization's accounting requirements for specified classes order 2025. So where NPO with cumulative revenues or grants of $500,000 and above, where they have, cumulative revenues or grants for $500,000 and above, that NPO shall have their accounts audited annually by an approved auditor under the Accountancy Provisions Act, and must provide, along with the filing of their annual returns, a copy of that audited financials and a copy of their management letter. There's also mention of the Belize Companies Act. So if the NPO is an incorporated company, this act sets out, of course, for example, the requirements for Belize companies and also other requirements for Belize companies. While not an enforceable means as the other above referenced legislation, we thought it was best to still remind you of the FSC's guidance on best practices for nonprofit organizations to mitigate the risks of terrorism financing abuse. This guidance practice and the legislation above, of course, can be accessed on the FSC's website, the Financial Services Commission website, or FSC, or also on the Belize Company and Corporate Affairs Registry's website. As we get into defining an NPO here, we want to speak to which entities must be registered as an NPO. So in Belize, you'll see that a nonprofit or herein referred after within the presentation as NPO in some circumstances is a company or a body of persons, whether it is incorporated or cooperated as a trust or other legal arrangement. It is established for the primarily for the promotion of charitable, philanthropic, religious, cultural, educational, social, or fraternal purposes or other activities or programs. NPOs are also created for the benefit of the public or a section of the public within Belize or elsewhere, and an NPO raises or distribute funds within Belize or elsewhere for that purpose or object. Registering an NPO. We just thought it would be also beneficial to remind you that the Director General of the FSC is the NPO Registrar, and the Deputy Registrar of the Belize Companies and Corporate Affairs Registry, which I may speak to as being the registry going forward in the presentation, is the Deputy Registrar of NPOs. So therefore, the Deputy Registrar of the NPOs assists with the execution of functions and responsibilities of the NPO Registrar. In this circumstance, then, the FSC is the regulator, and as it relates to registration, to filing of annual return, for example, or changes of an NPO, these are to be done with the registry. As it relates to varying benefits of being an NPO, there's, for example, legal recognition, which provides your NPO with a legal status. It fosters trust among donors, beneficiaries, and the general public. So, for example, the NPO is able to enter into contracts, can own property, it can open a bank account. In the NPO's name, there's the benefit of access to grants and international funding. You'll know that many donors and funding agencies require proof of legal registration before giving financial support, whether it be via an international medium or some local government or entity. There's also the benefit of accountability and trust, where registration comes with certain transparency requirements, such as, for example, filing requirements to the registry. And of course, this builds public trust and confidence and demonstrates the legitimacy and credibility of the NPO. Other benefits also includes, for example, advocacy efforts to influence social, environmental, and economic reforms. And then there's also the benefits of opportunities for networking and collaboration and increased visibility and outreach. Now we get into the requirements to register an NPO. So an application for registration as an NPO shall be made in the form prescribed in Schedule 1 of the NPO Act by the controller of the NPO and contain the information prescribed in Schedule 2 of the NPO Act. So as this slide provides, you're to complete a completed registration form, and as per Schedule 2, there are certain required information and supporting documentation that should be provided along with the registration form and completed within the registration form to submit a successful application. It's also required that the application shall accompany a copy of valid photo ID for the controller making the application. In terms of cost for doing so, we'll be speaking to that a bit later on in a future slide. So we spoke about on the previous slide about there being certain information and required documentation to submit along with your application. So this is what we extracted from Schedule 2 of the NPO Act to be able to share with you to see the type of information that are required within the application. So there is identity, address, and other contact information of a controller and other senior officers or members of the management personnel of the NPO. There, you required copies or particulars of a trust deed, and any other organizational documents. I forgot to include one thing. These documents are set out in the schedule, but it's only where applicable, because you'll recall in the previous slide that it could be incorporated, it could be incorporated. So it's applicable based on the type of NPO that you're registering. So there's copies of the Constitution, the Memorandum of Association, and the Articles of Association of the NPO. You're required to declare the purposes of the NPO, information with respect to the location of the funds and other property of the NPO and its banking arrangements, the source or anticipated source of contribution or funds, how contributions or funds are to be applied, any other evidence which reflects the organizational structure and functions of the NPO, and the proposed geographical areas of operations of the NPO, and of course, the financial year of the NPO. As Mr. Wagner chimes into the presentation, he'll be filling out an application to show you these, and you'll see these being a part of the application for registration of an NPO. Upon the successful application, the NPO will be approved and the registrar will enter the NPO on the NPO register and issue a certificate of registration. If the application is refused, the registrar will, of course, issue a notice to the applicant providing reasons for the refusal. So here we'll speak to how to register incorporated entities. So all companies that have a non-profit NPO status must, of course, register via the registrar's online business register system, or as we refer to the OBRS. We also provided for you on the slide a link where you can go to create your account. We have a note there. It's very important for you to understand that to successfully create an account and register, the NPO, the entity and all members must, of course, have a valid Belize Social Security card, because in registering, the number is verified by the system. So if the situation is that one member does not have a valid Belize Social Security card, the company must be registered by a licensed registered agent, licensed by the FSC. So as well, we also provided to you a link where you can go to visit and see who are the licensed registered agents. We provided the link for the registrar's website, so you can go and revert to that if needed. To continue to speak about registration for incorporated companies via the OBRS, after creating the account, the registration can be completed under the respective company name tab by entering the entity's details. So upon registration, no document should be uploaded into the system. So after you have done what you need to do within the OBRS, all the required documentation, as we spoke about a bit earlier, are to be emailed to the registry at inquiries@bccar.bz. So if the application is in order, the registration will be approved and a new certificate with a 9-digit company number will be issued. We now want to speak to the topic of annual filing for incorporated NPOs. So as you're aware that all entities must submit an annual return via the OBRS for incorporated companies. So the available payment options to do so are through, for self-represented companies, are DigiWallet, eCash, Belize Bank. So what I mean, just confirm by self-represented companies that all the holders have a valid Belize Social Security card. And as well, upon approval of the annual return, a detailed extract will be provided to you. Okay, so we now move to the screen where we'll be speaking about unincorporated NPOs. So as you've seen, we spoke about the incorporated NPOs on the previous slides. So here we're going to be speaking to how to register as an unincorporated NPO. So the entity would complete the registration form. I may have forgot to mention, sorry, that this form is accessible on the BCCR's website under forms. So the actual form from the NPO Act was revised and made fillable for ease of access and reference for you to complete. We have provided the link there for you where you can easily access a copy of the form for ease of reference. So the entity will email the completed form along with valid IDs, recent proof of address, and other supporting documents, also to inquiries@bccar.bz. And of course, again, the registry personnel will vet the documents, and if the registry is satisfied, this is where the payment options would be provided to you. So you are then, of course, to provide a copy of proof of payment, and once payment is confirmed, your registration certificate will be prepared and emailed, and as well, you will be placed on the NPO list of approved NPOs in Belize. So you can decide for this option whether you'd want to pick up a copy of the certificate either at the city of the registrar's Belmopan office or the Belize City office. Would like to just mention one thing here as well. It was brought to our attention that by certain NPOs that some financial institutions are requesting from unincorporated NPOs a copy of a detailed extract upon opening an account with that financial institution. But you'll recall that unincorporated NPOs do not necessarily receive that type of extract. So to accommodate the NPO, of course, upon request, the registry is able to assist by certifying one copy of the NPO's approved registration form. So that, of course, the NPO can provide that to the bank to prove that it has been approved as an unincorporated NPO in Belize. We'll also speak to annual filings for unincorporated NPOs. So as well, the NPO should complete the annual form. We also have the link there to where you can access a copy of the form. Again, you're to email the annual return form along with supporting documents to inquiries@bccr.bz. Again, the registered personnel about the documents. If the registry is satisfied, the payment instruction will be provided. Again, provide proof. Once proof is confirmed, you'll be provided with a copy of good standing certificate. And again, you can pick it up from either office once you advise the registry. So we've been speaking about annual filings for incorporated and unincorporated companies. At this point, just want to make sure that it's clear that there's, in addition to filing the annual return form available on the registry website, it's also important to clarify that, as we mentioned in the order on the first slide, if the NPO has a cumulative revenues or grants of $500,000 and above, it shall have its accounts audited annually and attach a copy of the audited financials and a copy of the management letter along with their filing of the annual report. So if the NPO does not fall within that threshold or is below that threshold, they can have the required pro forma balance sheet and pro forma income statement, which is attached to the annual return form, be completed either by an accountant or a bookkeeper. Here is where I'd want to make mention to the associated fees for incorporated NPOs and for unincorporated NPOs. So for new company registration, it's $300. For the company annual return, it's $200. For the NPO registration fee, there's no cost. For the NPO annual filing fee, there is no cost. Excuse me. For material changes, the cost is $50. Should you request additional copy of a certificate of good standing, then that is subject to a fee of $30. As it relates to fees for an unincorporated NPO, the registration fee is $100, and as well the annual filing fee for the annual return is $100. And here is where I'll pass you to Mr. Wagner to go over one of the forms.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So, hope you're enjoying the presentation thus far. And now I'll be sharing my screen and giving you a practical demonstration of where to go to access these forms, how to navigate the website, and how to provide the registry with a completed registration and also a completed annual return form as well. So now I'll be sharing my screen. Okay, can everyone comment if they're seeing my screen? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so first things first, you want to, when you're registering an NPO for the first time, you want to verify that the name is available, your NPO name of your choosing is available. So the first thing you would head on over to the BCCR website, which is bccr.bz, and then upon logging in, you would then navigate over to library and then proceed down to the list of active NPOs. So it would be this, and then you'd click on this icon, and then it would then bring up the recent NPO list that was last updated on the 25th of February 2025. So you would then proceed over to validate if the name of your choosing is available for your taking. So here, so if I've, for example, these are just practical scenario. So if I decided that I wanted to name my NPO Humana people to people, but I would see that this name is already taken on the list, so I cannot take this name again. So I would have to choose another name that is different from this one and that is not on the list. So this applies for both incorporated and unincorporated structure as well, depending on your formation type. Also, when when um when searching if your name is available as a company, then you would head on over to obrs.bccr.bz, and then you would click this icon below that requires you to search for a business entity to see if the name is available. So I would then proceed here and see if my name is available. So for this circumstance, I'm choosing that my NPO will be named Helping Kids. So I can see that there is no data available, and this name is up for the taking. Um, like the previous example I mentioned, if I decided that I wanted to be named as Humana as well, I would see that this name is already taken by Humana people to people, so I cannot take this name as well. And it's taken as a company, and it's on the NPO listing as well. So also, please be guided that if you scroll all the way below at the bottom of this list, it notes that this list undergoes updates every 14 days, and you should also note that certain entities may not appear on this list due to incomplete registration. That is what we're trying to avoid, and or other matters that are currently under review. And then if you have submitted a registration and your name does not appear on this list, we kindly request that you contact the BCCR or send an email to the inquiries@bccr.bc for further assistance. So moving on now. So we'll move on. So we already verified that our name is available, Helping Kids is available. So we'll then head on over to download and to access and download the registration form. So we would go to the BCCR's website, navigate down to forms. We click on forms, and then it would be the first option, which is number 1, nonprofit organization registration form, which is schedule 1. So then we would open this icon and then download this said form. Also, um, the supporting documents or the instruction that supports these documents can also be found on services, and then you'd proceed down to nonprofit organization. And this also outlines that first things, you would need your complete registration form, which we have already downloaded. And then secondly, it would be the required information and supporting documentation that my colleague went through in the earlier presentation, in the PowerPoint presentation. And also this outlines the requirements for annual filing, as my colleague already went over as well. So you can access these information on the services under nonprofit organization. So we already downloaded our nonprofit organization form, and now we'll fill it out. So here is a PDF copy of the form that we've downloaded from the website. So for this purpose, we decided to name our organization Helping Kids 501. So that is the first field that you'd want to fill out, is to give a clear name of your organization, and that your name does not does not associate itself or is not the same, is not on the list of the active MPO as well. We have already validated that, so we have Helping Kids 501, and now we'll proceed on over to indicate if we have an office telephone number. If we don't, then you would put not applicable or none in that option. However, you are required to indicate at least one phone number for the organization. It can be the same phone number of the controller itself or any other members, just a contact number wherein we can call the organization at any given point regarding any matter that may have arisen. Also, you're required to disclose email address as well. So for this purpose, we have helpingkid@gmail.com. So firstly, this would be a required option, name of the organization, then a mobile number, then an email address, then we move on down. So we would state that our physical address for our organization is located at 5th Street, South Corozal Town, and then we'd indicate if we have any PO box, and then for this purpose it's 152, and also if we have any website that is currently up and active for the organization itself. So we've decided that our organization would be www.helpingkids.com. So moving on, this is another required option to indicate as well. So the non-profit organization financial year end. So your organization determines when it decides to close its books and when its financial year is coming to an end. Your financial year can either run through a fiscal period ending December 31st, or it can end at any end of month. And for these purposes, I've decided that my organization financial year will end at April 31st, and subsequently every year now. So my financial year would run from every April 31st, and then my annual return would be filed 4 months. I'd have that period from April 31st to 4 months after. Then I can have that grace period to file my annual return. If I've decided to end my financial year on December 31st, then I'd have that period from January 1st to 4 months after to file my annual return as well. So it's just scenario. So like I mentioned, our financial year will be ending April 31st now. So now moving on. So I'll move on to section 2 of this form, which indicates the controller's contact information. So here I'd indicate that the controller name is Kata Wagner. That is a required field, and then my physical address would be in industrial area, city of Belmopan. That is another required field, and then I'll indicate my phone number, and then my position in the organization. So I've indicated that I'm a controller slash a director, and then I would also sign this required option. So I'd put my signature here to validate that I have completed this section, and then I'll also indicate my email address as well. So moving on to section 3, which speaks about the organization operating details. So this required option requires that you to in full detail describe the purpose of your organization. So my purpose of Helping Kids 501 is Helping Kids 501 exists to support the holistic development and well-being of the underprivileged and at-risk children, and our mission is to provide access to education, nutrition, healthcare, and safe environments where children can learn, grow, and thrive. So this is just outlining your organization, what you will be doing. That is associated, whether it be your cultural, philanthropical, religious type of organization that you've decided to register as well. So it is a normal circumstance that we've noticed that some individuals, upon completing the form, they would just copy and paste or believe that the information provided in 3, that describing the purpose of the organization, would be the same as outlining the activities of the organization. However, it's the requirements is quite different. The activities of the organization is required to how you would go about um, soliciting donations in order to meet the purpose of your organization. So this is my purpose, and now through these means of activities, I would um, I would go about meeting the purpose of my organization. So this would be done through community programs, partnership, advocacy, and fundraiser. So this is what is expected of outlining what is the activities of organization. These are just some examples. There you can go about um, performing several activities that would meet the purpose of your organization itself. So since we've cleared that up, we'll then move on down to outlining the name, address. It's basically the associated individuals' information with the organization that we would outline in below. So for this purpose, we have that our senior officer. So we'd have that Miss Rochelle McFadden. We'd indicate also her physical address, phone number, and her position that she plays in the organization. Also, we have that she signed her respective tab, and then she has also indicated her email address as well. So as similar to the controller details that were inputted, these are all the required fields that are expected to be completed: the name, physical address, mobile position, signature, and email address as well. So here we have also Miss Ariel Mosham, her address, um, also apologies, her signature should be here. So her signature, she'll sign on it, and then her position is as secretary, and then her mobile number, and also we've indicated her email address. And then we have successfully completed section 3 of this registration form, and then we'd move on down to complete section 4, which is the source of contribution for the organization for the preceding year and the anticipated sources of contribution for the upcoming year. So if you have already been an active NPO, then you would indicate what were your sources of contribution for a preceding year in this circumstance. If you are just starting up, excuse me one more. So if you're just starting up, then you won't be required to indicate these won't be applicable to you because you're just starting up, so you won't be able to disclose that you've collected any donation because you're just starting up. However, if there is a circumstances that may arise that you have been active as an NPO soliciting donation but haven't registered, then you're required to indicate the several activity type wherein you solicit donation from, and the amount, and also the geographical areas. However, a required option, because you're a newly starting up NPO, you are required to indicate um, your anticipated sources of contribution. So here, for these purposes, I've indicated that my preceding donation, I got 10,000 from an US address, which is indicated here in full. Also, the other activity type. So we got fundraising activities and events. So we got 5,000 from that. and the geographical area would be Belize. And then we also solicited a grant, so of 20,000 from the government of Belize as well. So we've indicated that and the specific area that this money came from. So also, since we're projecting that our donation for the upcoming year is would be 30,000 from the same US address, and we've indicated the specific area. Also, we indicated that we will also host a fundraising activity, and then it's just a projected amount of 3,000 that we may earn in Corozal, and then a grant that we may solicit another 20,000 from the same previous donor as well. So I successfully completed section 4, and now I would move on to section 5, which would be I've already acquired the contribution, or also sourced where I'm gonna um solicit my required donation that would aid my charitable purpose, and then now it's now time to apply my funds. So you're required to indicate where these funds are being applied. If you have applied these funds for the preceding year, then you're required to indicate. If you haven't been active, then you are required to indicate where would you for the upcoming year, where would you apply these funds that you've just solicited. So here we will go down. So we have the first section which speaks about the preceding year if you already been active, or the upcoming year, and then the activity type, which would be the same as where the donation has been arrived from. And also now we have the mode of disbursement, the amount expended, and the geographical areas for preceding, and the same applies for upcoming year. So moving on down now to the activity type. So we would see that funds donated are dispersed in accordance with the NPO purpose as we've outlined in section 2 of this registration form. So our NPO purpose, we've decided that we'll use a financial institution, which would be any banks, credit unions, or any sort of legal financial institution within Belize, that we would disperse these funds. So the amount expended would be the amount dispersed. So we've decided that we're gonna disperse $2,000 to Corozal for the preceding year that we were active. So we've dispersed 2,000 to Corozal, 5,000 to Belize, and 5,000 to Orange Walk using a financial institution. Also, for the year that we were active, we also utilized, we've also dispersed cash of 500 was sent to Toledo, 1,000 was sent to Stan Creek, and $200 were sent to Spanish Code. That was for the preceding year. However, our projected amount for the upcoming year now, we've decided that our organization will not disperse or not apply any funds through financial institution. However, we will use MVTS. MVTS is also known as in our jurisdiction would be either Western Union or MoneyGram that we can use to make international transfers through money value transfer services providers. So we've decided that we're gonna send $1,000 to Jamaica. It's just a foreseeing option, and then through any other regulated channel. Then if this may be an option that you guys choose, then you'd indicate and you'd specify which regulated channels that you've decided to use that is not listed here as well. So we decided that we're gonna send $50 to Toledo through this other regulated channel. So then we've completed that option. And then here, funds were also applied going down to for last year. So you'd see this option because these two fields are for the preceding year and these are for the upcoming year. So we've foreseen that salaries are about to be expended. $1,000 was paid out and 1.5, and then so we've indicated that, and then for the upcoming year, we would say that the salaries may remain the same and would be dispersed to the same area. So we'd say that it would disperse to Bangupan, and that would apply for the preceding year, and for the upcoming year, it's just a foreseeing amount. And then we've decided that we've also have a rent expense, so 2,000, and we've decided that that would be expended in Corozal due to our physical address being there. We're renting a building, and then that same $2,000 is expected to be spent for next year as well. So we've successfully completed indicating where our expenses for salaries and rent were applied, the amount, and the geographical area as well. And then if we have any other expenses that is associated with the organization, whether it be insurance, utilities, pension, or any other expenses that is associated with the organization, then we would indicate the amount and specify, and you can also specify which area these funds are applied. So we'd say 500 applies to, we'd say make payment. Here would indicate that 500 was applied to pay utilities, and then we could just put the GOB because we'll outline that utilities was that was paid, and then also it's just a foreseeing amount that we would budget around 500 to pay utilities for the year, and then that will go to the GOB as well, and it would indicate that. So now completing section 6, banking arrangement. So if you were able to open an account and you have an active bank account for your organization, or for the purposes that wherein you solicit donation and funds are being held in, then you would indicate if the name of your bank or financial institution. So for this purpose, I already had a bank account since I already been active. So my organization would be St. Francis. The name of the bank that the credit union that I've been using is St. Francis Xavier Credit Union, and the address of this bank is Corozal Town. However, if I'm a newly starting up NPO, then chances are high that I won't have an active bank account, but filling out my registration form to in order to provide proof that I'm an active NPO and I've meet all the requirements by the Belize Companies and Affairs Registry that they've outlined, and then I have my registration form that I will then furnish to them, providing proof of the registration of my organization. So if section 6 is not applicable at the moment, then you would put there's no banking information available, and then you'd put that the address of the bank is not applicable at this point in time. So moving on to section 7, where it speaks about other arrangements regarding funds or other property. So if your organization has any property or funds, any sort of fixed assets, you would then have to declare those as well. So arrangements regarding property or funds, where the funds or other property representing 10% more of the funds or other property of the NPO is held by an individual or an entity on behalf of the NPO, you must include details of the name, address, and telephone number of these individual entity. So moving on now to section H, which requires you to outline if you're submitting any other supporting documentation. So because I decided that I wanted a NPO formation of an unincorporated entity, I only want the NPO status itself. I don't want to be recognized as a company. So I would be required to submit a constitution. So then I would put that yes, I have my constitution, and also if I'm attaching other evidence of organization structure or function, then I would indicate yes that I would be submitting those, and then the document description would be indicating that it's an SSB card of the members. So if I was a company, since you're already registered as a company in OBRS, you have already fulfilled your requirements as a company in OBRS. The registry has these information, so you don't need to attach the memorandums or your articles or bylaws of the company because the registry already holds those information. But if you want, you can always attach them. But just note that the registry do have access to these information once your company status is active and your fees are up to date as well, fees of the company. So here we have successfully completed the form, completing all 8 sections. Now we would just go below and declare that I hereby declare that the above statements are true and correct and of best belief of my knowledge. And then I'll indicate the name of the controller. I'll date when this form is completed, and then I'll also sign. Upon sign, I also have my package here, which would be scanned copies of all the associated members. As you can see here, I'm choosing an unincorporated structure, and all my members are Belizean. They all have a valid Belize social security card. So hence the reason I am able to submit the application for our organization on behalf of the organization. However, if Ms. Rochelle McFadden did not hold a valid social security card but has ID from another jurisdiction, from another foreign jurisdiction, then I would have to take my unincorporated organization or incorporated organization and seek the assistance of a registered agent in order to assist me with registering my NPO and also submitting my annual return on a year-on-year basis as well. So since all my members are Belizeans, I have the SSB card for each one of them, and also I've I am required to also attach a utility bill, a valid proof of address as well, and then that would be comprising of the application package and also a constitution because I decided that my structure would be an unincorporated. So this is just a sample constitution. Your organization can deem how it decides to construct its constitution, but a constitution is just to encompass that you captures the relevant name, nature, and status. This is just an example of how a constitution may look. Your organization decides how they may want to develop its constitution and outline the prescribed requirements of each section that they seem applicable. So this is just a sample, and then I would attach this with the proof of address, the SSB, and my completed registration form, which is Schedule 1. So upon completing those, then I would then email all of these supporting documents and the form to inquiries@bccr.bz. And then upon submitting my application, so I'll utilize utilize the required email for this purpose, inquiries@bccr.bz, and then the registry personnel would then vet my application package. And since we have successfully completed, the turnaround time um, should be quite short. So upon completing, and since my package is in its completeness state, the registry personnel would then email me back with the required banking information to make payment. So this would be where you would go about applying that $100 fee. So the registry personnel would indicate the payment option, which would be a Belize bank account number. That would have the relevant details, and then the associated fee would be charged would be $100. This can be done. You can make payment via going into the bank and making a deposit and taking a photo of the receipt that you've received from the bank, that you've made the deposit to the specific account, and then you would email that back to the registry, or you can utilize the online transfer option to the specific account. So you'd log into your relevant to your to your bank account, or your transfer your online banking, and then you would then transfer the funds to that to that Belize bank account number as well. And then you would take a screenshot and then attach that into the email, and then forward that email to the registry. Upon the registry receiving your confirmation of payment, the registry would also validate that the payment has been received on their end. And subsequently, once the payment has been received, then they would forward you a digital copy, confirming that you've successfully registered as an NPO, and you'd have your registration certificate. And then also the registry would then indicate that you have the option to pick up a certified copy of your registration certificate at either the Belmopan or the Belize City copy at the Belmopan or the Belize City office. So that brings us to an end of the registration form. I believe now we would have a 5-minute break due to the extensive information and the length of these forms. So we'd take a 5-minute break, and then we would be back to go through how to successfully complete an annual return. Okay, and we're back. So I'll be taking you through how to complete the annual report filing. So I would also do a practical tutorial how to access the required annual report, how to access it, how to complete it, and how to submit as well. So let me go about sharing my screen again. So here we are, we're back at the BCCR's website. So then we'll then go to library again, and then proceed down to forms, and then we'll click on the icon, and then proceed down to, it would be, okay, it would be the last one. So it would be nonprofit organization annual return form, which would be schedule 5. So it would be number 8 of the nonprofit organization forms. We would then open that, and then we would download the form and complete it. So that is how you go about accessing the annual return form and completing it, and then filing it to inquiries at bccr.bz as well. So now I'll be taking you through the practical way of completing this form. So since in the previous demonstration we've successfully registered our nonprofit organization, now our financial year has ended and we're between that 4-month period. As you guys indicated, I've made a type of typo error in the registration form indicating that my financial year ended April 31st. However, as we know that April doesn't have 31 days, so it was corrected that it should have been April 30th. So apologies for that error, but good eye on that one. So here we have that the name of our nonprofit organization, so would indicate that again, the address of our registered office of the NPO, which would be the same principal address, the telephone number that which indicated in our registration form, and also the email. So the name of the person completing this form. So for this instance, it would be Kida Wagner, and then it would be position, it would be the controller. So I would indicate that the position of the person completing this annual return form is the controller. And then I'd indicate the telephone number and the email address of the controller itself as well, because I'm the one completing the form. And then this is where we'd indicate that our NPO financial year begins. So in the registration form, we've indicated that our financial year on a year-on-year basis ends on April 30th of every year. So since our financial year ends on April 30th, we've indicated that. So the NPO financial year begins on May 1st, which would be for this year. So it would begin on May 1st, 2025, and then would end on April 30th of next year, 2026. And after April 30th, and 4 months, I'd have that grace period to then complete this annual report and then file it with the registry. So here is the note that my colleague has mentioned in the presentation. So this indicates that an NPO which is required to file a certified copy of its audited account in this return in accordance with the NPO Act shall not be required to complete the pro forma balance sheet in section 1 of this form or the pro forma income statement in section 2. So you would see that if your cumulative earnings is above 500, you're required to conduct an audit, and hence the reason you're not required to complete this balance sheet. This is only applicable for those whose cumulative earnings is below 500. So since my earning is below 500, um 500,000 to be corrected as well, I would be required to complete the balance sheet and the income statement. So if my earnings was above 500,000, then I won't be required to complete these two sections. However, I would be required to attach my audited financial statements and also the management letter, as my colleague indicated. So with no further ado, let's move on completing our balance sheet. So here we go about indicating that our assets would indicate our assets, and then we'd indicate the relevant line items. So it would be cash in hand, and these are indicated here. So we would see that our total current assets would be summated to 90,000. This would be a summation of the other current assets, investments, cash in bank, cash in hand. So it would be a summation of all these relevant line items, which would then derive to our total current assets, which would then be 90,000. So then our second option, which would be the fixed assets, which we would then indicate that we have a fixed assets of a property valued at 50,000, and then any other fixed assets, then we'd indicate the value, and then we'd indicate our total fixed assets. So to acquire so our total assets for these circumstances would be a summation of the total current assets and the total fixed assets, which would then derive at the total assets for my organization. So then moving on, I'm completing my liability section. So I would indicate the current liabilities and also the long-term liabilities of my organization. So my current liabilities which would be I've indicated that I have a loan of 5,000, and I've indicated that other liabilities which would be 2,000 the amount. So the summation would then be 7,000, which would be my total current liabilities. And then moving on to long-term liabilities, I also we also have a mortgage as well of 10,000, and other long-term liability of 5,000, and then our total long-term liabilities, which would then be 15,000. So in order to get my total liabilities, I am required to add the total long-term liabilities of 15,000 and the total current liabilities, which would then equate to 22,000, which would be my total liabilities here. So moving on to my equity section. So I have 68,000 of my which would be my net income. And then I would indicate my accumulated surplus as well. So here I would then proceed down to complete the income statement, and then indicating the income that were received from donations. So I've indicated that I've received 200,000 from donation, income from grants. We've received 10,000 and income from fundraising activities. We've received 10,000 as well. If there are any other sources of income, then we would indicate that as well. If you have any income from investment, such as money earning interest at a financial institution, or any sort of investment that you may undergo, then you are required to indicate the value of such investments. And then we would see that our gross income, which would then be 221,000. So the gross income is a summation of all the line items under the income statements. So you then earn your gross income here. And you'd see that we'd go on to complete the expenses section of the income statements, which would indicate where the funds donated and dispersed in accordance with the NPO purpose. So this 150,000, we'll go further to break down where this 153,000 was spent in the below section of this form, which is required to declare where these funds were applied. So 150,000 were donated in accordance with the NPO purpose. Other funds were donated and dispersed of 1,000. Operating expense lies at 1,005. Government fees of some sort lies at 1,000, and our total expenses being at 153,500. So you then see that your net income, which would be your gross income, that we would have our gross income of 221,500 here. We would then less the total expenses of 153,000, which would then be our value of 68,000, which then ties back to our net income. So for our operating year, lying from May 1st, 2025, up to April 30th, 2026, our net income is at $68,000 for this organization. and then you would see our cumulative revenue of gross income, which would be 221,500. So this indicates that I'm below that 500,000 threshold. Hence the reason I'm only required to complete the pro forma balance sheet and income statement. If this was above 500,000, then I would then need my accounts to be duly audited by an auditor, and then I would be required to attach the audited report, the audited financial statement, and the management letter. However, my gross income remains at 221,000, so I'm not required to have my accounts duly audited. So moving on to section 4, where these funds are going to be dispersed. So here's the relevant activity type, which is associated with the line items in the income statement, and we have that funds are donated and dispersed in accordance with the NPO purpose. We have the relevant mode of disbursement, the amount expended, and the geographical areas. So here we have the same mode of disbursement, which can be FIs such as bank or credit union. MVTS, as you know, can be classified as Western Union or MoneyGram. And if there's any other regulated channel that you may use, you can indicate that as well. You have the option to um to indicate any cash as well. So funds were expended using the financial institution. Um, so we dispersed 18,000 to Toledo, 20,000 was dispersed to Cayo, 35 was to Corozal, and 22,000 the summation of 22,000 and 25,000 was dispersed to Belize City. And here we have that 25,000 was dispersed through Western Union to Dangriga, and then we've decided that we want to expend the 25,000 to Independence as well using MoneyGram. Remember, guys, these are just assimilated stuff. I'm not I don't believe it's possible to disperse these large quantities of funds using MVTS as well, but it's just for a practical source. So moving on to other funds donated. So here, so this option is like if you're aiding another NPO organization. So if you decide to donate any of your donation that you receive to any other organization. So for let's say that I've decided that I want to donate 5,000 to um 5,000, then I would indicate somewhere on this form to Belize Red Cross, right? Let's say a hurricane happened and then I want to donate to the Red Cross, then I would indicate that I would donate 5,000 to the Red Cross and then to the specific era. So probably it would be the Red Cross is probably situated in Belize City. So then I would then indicate that here. But my organization has decided not to donate our funds to any other organization or disperse our funds. However, we've decided that we chose to disperse cash of 500 of 1,000 to Keycocker, and 500 was sent to Placencia. And our government fees stands at $1,000. So as you can see, we've indicated these relevant expenses in our income statement as well. And here we've indicated that these funds were applied at the government fees, and then Any other expenses were submitted to the amount 1.5. So whatever is declared in the income statement, you are required to declare them here as well, just to provide a detailed breakdown of how these funds were expended. So now we would go to section 5, which would be indicating the recipients of these funds. So since you've indicated that funds were dispersed, so if you guys remembered up above, we've indicated that these um, summation of these funds were dispersed to these jurisdiction, and then we've also indicated here as well that the 150 was dispersed in accordance with the NPO purpose, and other funds were donated and dispersed of 1,000. That would be the cash that we've indicated below. So now we're gonna go about identifying who received these funds. So, list the 10 largest recipients of funds. If you don't have 10, if you only have 3 largest recipients of funds, um, you're just required to list it up to the 10 largest recipients of funds received, the amount dispersed, the mode of disbursement as well that you've utilized, and the geographical areas. So here I've indicated these several names that, apologies, that Miss Angela Martinez, 25,000 was sent to her for tuition to support her teaching diploma, and this was sent. The mode of disbursement was done via a wire transfer, and her Miss Angela Martinez geographical area is tied with the Belize district. So we can see here that, remember, we indicated that the funds donated with the NPO's purpose was 25,000 and it was expended at Belize City. Now further below, we actually indicated where that money has went. So Miss Angela in Belize City, in the Belize district, received the 25,000 via the same wire transfer that has been done at a financial institution. And then here we have where Darnell Young received 20,000 via check in the city of Belmopan. And then if you would go back here, you would see that I've also um, indicated that 20,000 was sent to Kyle, but however, it was further broken down that that same 20,000, since Belmopan is situated in the Kyle district, so I'd further indicated that Mr. Young received that same 20,000 via check in the city of Belmopan, and for this purpose, we've indicated that that 20,000 was for the purchase the equipment for small farming initiative, and then we've indicated where the remainder of funds has been applied as well. So you'd see where that 25,000 was spent via the MVTS, who it went to and the reason why, or the in our in accordance to our NPO purpose, and we've indicated the required mode of disbursement and each geographical area. So top 10 countries. So if you're deciding to send to another regional body, so it indicate the specific country. However, we decided to operate locally, so we've indicated that not country but the specific area within Belize that the money was sent to. So was sent to Dangriga, Independence, Belize District, City of Belmopan, and Toledo, of the required amount. So here we have where the 25,000 was expended to using MoneyGram and Western Union. So we've indicated that these are were the largest funds. Remember that 25,000 that was expended to Belize for that, let's see, that teaching diploma. All right, so we've indicated that here. That 20,000 that was expended into in Belmopan. So we've indicated that here, and also that 18,000 that went all the way down to Toledo. So we've successfully completed that option. And here we go about completing now section 7. So annual review threshold. So since the order has been passed, if you note that the form currently does not have this 500,000 here, but it will be amended to indicate that complete this section if the figure reported in your gross income above or in the NPO's audited accounts equals to or exceeds 500,000. So remember, we have our gross income here. Our gross income. So remember that 221,000. See, it's below that 500,000 threshold. Hence the reason for completing both balance sheet and income statements in this annual report. So this does not apply to me because I'm at 221,000 in my gross income. It does not exceed this. So I would indicate that the NPO has sent 30% or more of its gross income overseas. So remember, we haven't sent our 30% or more of our gross income overseas since our money was dispersed locally within Belize. So that also indicate that no. So then if it was yes, then we were required to complete B and D below as well. So that would be what is the total amount of funds or property sent overseas during the last financial year. So you'd indicate the value of that. And also what percentage of the NPO's gross income does the amount indicated in the response to question B above represents, and then you'd indicate that here, and also what is the name of the licensed auditor who conducts the audit of the NPO. So then you would indicate that John Doe John Doe is the person that conducted my audit because my gross income exceeded 500,000 Belize, right? So it's only in that circumstance that you are um required to have your NPO duly audited on a year-on-year basis. So so if you made any large sales or purchases of property or any other sort of assets, so here would be if you sell any assets that were associated to the NPO, then you would put the what was sold, and also the value. And if any purchases were made, like if you purchase a land, any sort of asset that would be of high value, then you would also indicate that here as well. The say purchase a vehicle valued of 10,000, then you would indicate that here as well. But we haven't purchased any assets nor sold any assets that is associated with the NPO. So then we will then move on to the declaration part. So I, Kilo Wagner, which is the controller of the NPO, which is Helping Kids 5-1, certifies that this information is provided is true and best of my knowledge, and that there has been no change in in the material particulars of the NPO that has been notified to the registrar, that there are no major occurrences that have taken place that can negatively impact the reputation of the NPO or the NPO sector, and that any and all matters that can be categorized as major have been reported to the registrar or the NPO if applicable. So then I would go on and sign this here, and then so I would indicate that here I signed, and then would be today's date. Okay, so here we go. All right, so I've successfully signed and dated, and then now I would be submitting this accompanied with any other supporting documentation to inquiries at bccr.bz, and upon them reviewing this form and the other supporting documentation, and if it's in its completeness state, then they would then indicate that we've met the requirements, and then they would also convey that banking information wherein you can remit payment via going to make a deposit, or making an online transfer of that required $100 associated fee. And then upon the registry verifying that the fee has been paid, then you would then receive your digital copy via email of your good standing, and also the registry would then indicate the option to pick up your good standing certificate also in the Belmopan or the Belize City office of your choosing as well. So that basically wraps up how to how to access and complete the annual return report. So just a keynote to remember that how NPO related matters, whether it be your registration form, your annual report on a year-on-year basis, any sort of inquiries or any sort of request for um, anything pertaining to your NPO is done through the inquiries at bccr.bz. And for your company, for if you're an incorporated structure, then that would be done through the OBRS. So that, but however, if you have a NPO structure, I mean a company structure, so you then ensure that your annual return is filed for your company, and then subsequently come on over to inquiries at BCCR and then file this annual report. So I hope that clarifies how to register a NPO and how to file your annual report on a year-on-year basis. So once again, thank you guys for your patience and your attention thus far, and we will proceed back to the presentation. So now I'll hand it back over to Miss McFadden.
My apologies, I was on mute. So the last slide that we have here, we wanted to discuss the topic of what leads to suspension or cancellation and how to prevent it. Pursuant to Section 12(1)(a) and (b) of the NPO Act, the registrar may cancel or suspend the registration if the NPO ceases to operate or exist, and if the NPO submits a written request for its registration to be cancelled or suspended, or in the circumstance of, as the slide presents, pursuant to Section 12(1)(c) of the NPO Act, the NPO registrar may cancel or suspend the registration of an NPO if, following the conclusion of an investigation, it was proven that the organization engaged or is engaged in wrongdoing, failed without reasonable cause to comply with any requirement of the NPO Act or any regulations made thereunder, or failed without reasonable cause to pay any prescribed fees required for registrations. We see the good works that NPOs in Belize are doing and how this improves the lives of others and the public good. And herein provides some best practices for prevention of suspension or cancellation. So these would include, of course, continued adherence to the requirements set forth in the NPO Act and all the other legislative frameworks we would have shared on the first slide. And of course, to, like I said, all other legal requirements in Belize. It's good to stay informed about legislative changes and best practices as published by the FSC and the Belize Company Corporate Affairs Register. So we suggest that where you can, you subscribe to those pages to become, to remain aware or up to date as to what is happening. As there's a publication of any matter, you would be advised via notification and email of publication. I'll stress on timely filing. As you'll see, we went over how to file, where to submit, and so on. As a reminder, the annual return must be filed within 4 months following the end of your financial year. Upon a successful filing, you will receive certificate of good standing. And another best practice we would like to recommend is to, of course, ensure to maintain accurate and transparent financial records. Accurate, it has to be accurate, up to date, and of course reflective of your organization's activities. And that's it for now in terms of some best practices to prevent the suspension and cancellation of a registration.
Okay, so this concludes the presentation, and we now open the Q&A segment. So let's start with our first question. This can go out to any of our speakers. We have, does the annual filing need to be done also in BCCAR as well as sending it via email? I will repeat, does the annual filing need to be done also in BCCAR as well as sending it via email?
Okay, Miss Malfeson, I'll take that one. So, the question wasn't indicated very clearly, but I'll go about explaining both annual filing. So, if you're a company and also you want an NPO status, then you would have to submit your annual filing for your company first, meeting your company obligation, and then file that would be done, the company obligation annual filing would be done through OBRS. And then for your NPO status as a company, that would be that same schedule 5, which we went through just now. So that annual report would then be emailed to inquiries at bccr.bz. So, and then if you're an unincorporated NPO, so you don't have a company structure, but you're just an unincorporated NPO that comprises of a constitution and a group of individuals coming collectively together to achieve one goal, one purpose, then you would then file your annual report that we've went through previously to inquiries at bccr.bz and remitting the payment associated with the annual return on a year-on-year basis to acquire good standing. So I hope that clarifies everything.
Okay. Miss Rochelle, Miss McFadden, this is going to be addressed to you. What is the difference between unincorporated and incorporated NPO? Sorry, Miss Rochelle, I believe you're still
Would you like me
muted.
to assist with that, Mr. Scheller?
Forgot I was on mute. My apologies. I can say some and then you can also add if needed, Mr. Wagner. We can say that NPOs can adopt a variety of legal structures depending on their needs and how they work and their membership. So maybe just break it down a bit for further clarification. Unincorporated NPOs can be associations, general partnership, just trust, whereas the incorporated NPOs would be, for example, I think it's international foundations, companies, and limited liability partnerships. You can add, Mr. Wagner, if there's anything else that would
Correct.
clarify this question.
Correct. Those are the associated formation. So as I mentioned before, you have the option to have a cooperated NPO, or you have the option to have an unincorporated NPO. And remember, the NPO is not a formation itself, but is solely a status that is applied to your organization.
Okay, Miss McFadden, this one also goes out to you. Can the annual return be unaudited, or it has to be done by an auditor?
If we look at what the order sets out, it says that an NPO with annual cumulative revenues or grants of $500,000 and above shall have their accounts audited annually by an approved auditor under the Accountancy Professions Act. If the revenues or grants are, of course, under that threshold, the Act provides that the information that would be presented within the pro forma balance sheet and income statement are to be prepared by an accountant or a bookkeeper.
Okay, if I may add to that, you guys remember that practical simulation that we did just now? Remember we went through where our gross income was, and then that indicated that our gross income for that scenario was at 221,000, which is below that 500,000 threshold. So hence the reason we did not need our accounts to be duly audited by an auditor. However, if our gross income had exceeded that 500,000, then we would then need to seek the assistance from an auditor in order to audit our organization itself, and then we would then receive back that audited report and also the management letter, and then we would then attach that to um, our annual report, and then convey that to the registry as well.
Okay. This one can go out to either or. There are companies who were previously registered with BCCAR, but they were never registered as an NPO during the initial registration process. How can these companies go about getting their company registered as an NPO?
Miss Jen, would you be able to assist with that one? Would you mind repeating that again
Yes.
for Miss Jen as well?
Sure. There are companies who were previously registered with BCCAR, but they were never registered as an NPO during the initial registration process. How can these companies go about getting their company registered as an NPO?
Okay, good morning, everyone. They would, being that we're thinking that they have re-registered in a new system, then they can file as a new NPO, going through the doing it through the email in in inquiries. So they would go to forms and do the new application as a new NPO, providing that they are already registered in OBRS, no? and then they will submit just the form to inquiries. The fee would be free for that. So they would just need to fill out the application form.
Okay,
I
thank you,
hope that
Miss
answers the
Armstrong.
question.
And again, this one can go out to any of our speakers. The NPO controller would be the person to complete the NPO registration or renewal, but the statement was made that the registered agent would be required to make the submission in the event of any foreign director. What are the specific roles of the registered agent and the controller in this scenario? I will repeat. The NPO controller would be the person to complete the NPO registration or renewal, but the statement was made that the registered agent would be required to make the submission in the event of any foreign director. What are the roles of the registered agent and the controller in this scenario?
I can speak a bit into that. Then you all can jump in if needed, as usual. As a reminder, the controller is the person who owns, again, controls or manages or directs an NPO. So depends on the legal structure. The controller may be, for example, a trustee of a trust, director of a company, general manager of a partnership, etc. So I think it was a slide that I had, which provides that if the registered agent is required in that particular circumstance, the controller would be the one to ensure the completion of the application along with whatever required information and supporting documentation to provide a completed application for review. And the registered agent's role, from what I understand, would be, of course, to facilitate the submission of that application to the registry. I know that registered agents also provide to the entity applying to become an NPO information or reminders sometimes in terms of when to file certain documents and documents to provide to have, on file and so on, to keep up to date and to, like I said, to ensure compliance with certain requirements. I don't know if that answered the question. If there's anything else anyone would want to add to that query.
So basically, the registered agent facilitating conveying the information to the registry because the organization itself and its members, the members of the organization does not have a valid social security card in Belize. So that would be the only instance wherein you would, as an NPO, would engage a registered agent if members associated with your organization does not have a Belize social security number, then that can be then facilitated through a registered agent. So that's what basically my colleague mentioned just now.
Okay, thank you. And again, this one can go
Maybe I
out.
can add one more thing there. Sorry, I forgot to
Sure.
mention that. I think there was a question asking why it is a policy implemented to align the requirements for incorporated and unincorporated MPOs. So that would tie into what we discussed, and also I think another question that may or might come up. So to mention that.
Okay. This one, again, this can go out to either of our presenters. We have been registered for a couple of years now with this new and clear explanation and information on the annual report as an NPO. When is the annual report expected in 2025 for 2024?
Could you repeat that
Um,
one more time? Or you got to
Yeah, let
mention?
me
oh,
repeat. However, I believe what's being asked here is that for, let me see. that this NPO has been registered for a couple of years, and they're asking for clarification on when the annual report is due for 2024 filing. So for the filing year 2024, when would that be due in 2025?
Okay, if they filed last year, probably around this time, well, they're due. Remember, they have that 4 months grace period, so they can file within that time or after, no? After the 4 months or right around that time. So if they filed last year, March, then they have an additional 4 months to file the annual return.
Okay.
Right. Just to add to that, guess as you remember that we've indicated in our registration form, our fiscal year would indicate that it would end at the end of any month of our choosing when we decided to close our books. So after that, then we had that scenario wherein our financial year began on May 1st, 2025, and then that would then end April 30th of 2026. And after April 30th, then you'd have so then you'd have up to August. You'd have that 4 months grace period after April 30th through August to file your annual return. So that's just an example. If your fiscal year ended on every end of month of April, which would be April 30th.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wagner, this one goes to you. The scenario is if we have multiple donors from the USA across different states, should we list each individual with the respective address, or can we just add the sum of donations from that country and place it under USA for the geographic location?
Well, it all determines these if they're small, it determines because it requires you to list the 10 largest donation and the respective geographical areas. So if if these are the two donation that has been received, then you can list both, or you can provide a summation because it's just one geographical location. But you can go deeper and then disclose the specific area as well if you deem necessary as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Armstrong, this one I believe would be more appropriate for you. Which forms are required to be completed to regain its NPO status for a company which lost its NPO status due to lack of filing proper documents but still continues to operate as an NPO?
It will be the same annual return form that they will need to submit. So the NPO annual return form, and then they will pay the fee of $100.
Okay. And one more question to you, Ms. Armstrong. Can the financial year be changed after registration?
Yes, I would say yes. They can. It depends on their articles. It would be an internal matter within that organization for them to decide what they would change it to. But they can.
Okay. All right, we are closing in on the Q&A segment. I do see here that we have quite the amount of questions, and we do apologize for not being able to respond to all of your inquiries. However, we would encourage for you to send your questions or concerns to the mailbox, which would be inquiries@bccar.bz. So in the event that your question hasn't been addressed and you still have concerns and you still have quite a few things to clarify with us, again, we would recommend, we would ask, we would encourage for you to send us your queries at inquiries@bccar.bz. So we have one last and final question, and Mr. Wagner, this one would go to you. On the annual return form, section 5 in particular, recipients of funds or non-profit purchases items which are then given to our clients. Should I list our top 10 vendors and then add a note of explanation? Let me repeat. On the annual return form, section 5, recipients of funds or non-profit purchases items which are then given to our clients. Should I list our top 10 vendors and then add a note of explanation?
I just opened section 5 of the annual return. Can you repeat that question one more time?
Sure. On the annual return form, section 5, recipients of funds or non-profit purchases items which are then given to our clients. Should I list our top 10 vendors and then add a note of explanation?
Um, Not the that would be not the vendors per se, but the actual recipient um of funds due to the organizational purpose. So yes, the vendor received the monetary value. However, you would then indicate that the amount dispersed, so the amount paid to the vendor, but however that went to an individual, and then the note of explanation explaining what what determined that value. Like for this instance, like Angela Martinez, she received probably books. So we would say books and school supplies for kids, right? So we'll say that Angela Martinez is the end user. So she is in Belize. So we have Angela receiving of value that would be probably $5,000 worth of books, right? And then and then you would indicate the mode of disbursement that was used to um to disperse that funds, basically. Not the vendor, but the end user that receives the the um the quantities that were dispersed.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Wagner. Okay, so this concludes our Q&A segment. Just a note, you all may have realized by now that a link has been shared in the chat where we kindly request
So
for
I
our
believe that
attendees to
answers
fill
that
out.
question, Ms. Bosham.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wagner?
Did you guys hear that response just now?
Okay, yes, we did, we did.
Okay, okay.
Oh, okay, so we have now concluded our Q&A. And you all may have realized that a link has been shared in the chat. We humbly request, kindly, very kindly, that our attendees fill out the survey so that, of course, this is feedback to us on our end on exactly, what your take is on this presentation that we have prepared. So, uh, thank you so much to Ms. McFadden and Mr. Wagner for that insightful presentation, and to our invited guests. These were some great questions, and once again, we do apologize for not being able to respond to all of your concerns. But once again, we would encourage for you to send send those concerns, the queries, your questions to inquiries at bccar.bz. We trust that the information today was meaningful and valuable. Before we close, just a quick reminder, a recording of today's session will be shared with you, and it will also be uploaded on our various social media platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, and on our website. If you'd like to stay in the loop for future webinars and resources, be sure to subscribe to our channels. We have, again, YouTube, and we also have our Facebook. On behalf of our entire team, once again, we are grateful for your attendance. So take care, and we hope to see you at our next session. Thank you, everyone.